Welcome everyone to Creatives in Conversation, and it's for June. It's June 1st, and I'm really excited for our featured creative to be Billy Brown today. Billy has been the host and in the background promoting so many poets over so many years that it's going to be great to hear more about his life and hear more about his poetry. I did do a blog post review, so I hope that you're able to read that if you haven't yet. To get to this event, you do have to sign into my newsletter, and so it's actually on the newsletter. You can click on there and read the blog post review. And then Billy's bio is also on the newsletter and in the review, and he has such an interesting bio. So I'm not going to take a lot of time because you do have access to those. I'm not going to take a lot of time talking about that. What I mostly want to do is just welcome everyone here and say how honored I am to be able to feature Billy and put him in the limelight, something that he doesn't do for himself. And 14 years now with the fixed and free readings, monthly readings, which is just incredible. And I have my 4 annual anthologies here. And now he's doing the quarterly ones as well. So that's all I'm going to say. And I'm just going to let Billy take it away. And Billy, I'm going to spotlight you, which will keep you in. Let's see, I'm trying to find it. Well, we have the speaker view, but I also, if I spotlight you,
Welcome to Mary
oh, there we
and
go.
to
Okay.
Marietta.
And then
Yay.
let's go ahead and everyone, I'm going to mute everyone except for, of course, Billy. And then with Q&A, we can unmute ourselves. But for now, if you're not muted, well, yeah, I see a lot of people. If you haven't muted, go ahead and mute yourself. And that way we don't have any background noise and so forth. Okay, so let's hear from A Life of Joy with Billy Brown.
Thank you very much, Mary. It's a pleasure to be here and an honor, and especially, having known you for a few years, uh, I want to acknowledge the wonderful creativity you've exhibited by creating this Creatives in Conversation series. And I appreciate the opportunity to be with you all. Thank you for attending. The first thing I want to do is share screen. The cover, some of you may not have seen this. This is the cover of the second issue, which will come out this month. I'm scheduled to receive copies of it from the printer in just a few days, and then I'll distribute it to those who have pre-purchased it and who've subscribed. So the photo you see is a deuce in a set of paintings that Denise Weaver Ross has painted. It's a deck of cards. And the first issue was the Ace of Hearts, which I thought was quite appropriate. The second one is a deuce, and issues 3 and 4 will be trays and a card representing the number 4. So I'm just so pleased to have Denise Weaver Ross's artistry involved in this this first volume of the Fixed and Free Poetry Quarterly. So I'll stop sharing that. And I have a script for myself. I may not follow it completely, but included in the script are some of the poems I'll read. So I want to share my screen of that script. And then I'll start talking as if I haven't started already. I grew up across the street from a municipal park in Midland, Michigan, where I played baseball, football, hockey in the winter, and basketball in neighborhood friends' driveways. They flooded the park. The park was a grassy park, but they flooded it in the winter for several months. There was an ice rink over there, and we would just have wonderful times skating, playing hockey, especially after a snow, and the snowplows had cleared the ice and piled up huge piles of snow on the rim of the ice rink. We'd just go as fast as we could and try to jump over those snowbanks. And sometimes, obviously, just ended up jumping into the snowbanks. But they were a lot of fun. It was a very happy childhood with a warm, loving mother and a father who provided for our family. I had two brothers, uh, Peter and George, who are still living, a sister, Martha, who is deceased, and aunts and uncles and cousins all living not far away. So we'd see them often, sometimes every month, in other cases, maybe once a year at Christmas time. My teachers appreciated my academic abilities and performance, and my parents were proud of my academic accomplishments. I remember how thrilled I was when my sixth grade teacher, Mrs. Farnham, announced that I had scored 100% on a 100-question test on the China unit that she just finished teaching us. Somehow that has really stuck in my mind as, I don't know, some kind of an indication of my brilliance, I guess. I don't know. I also remember how shocked I was when I found out when my beautiful fifth grade teacher got pregnant. I found out how that might have happened. And I thought, no, that sweet teacher could not possibly have done that thing. Ick. I also remember how in my 11th grade English class, Mr. Austin caught me making whistling bird sounds when he was reading a lovely little poem about a bird flitting in the woods. For 3 days, he made me move my desk into the hall just outside the classroom. And each day, as the students came in and out of the classroom, they ridiculed me by, tweaking me on the head or in the chest. And I was totally humiliated for 3 days. I vowed never to pay attention to poetry again. I refused to do any of the college assignments involved in reading or writing poetry. I hated poetry for the next 35 years. And here's the first poem I wrote after those 35 years. Between brown bookends. Fern Marsh Brown, 1920 to 1986, had beautiful brown hair, brown eyes, dimples a mile deep, a smile that stole my heart. I loved lingering in my sweet mother's arms on the couch late at night. As a boy, during Daddy's business trips, even on visits home during college years, when I knew she was dying of cancer. I am a shelf of wonderful memories between two brown bookends. I did not know she lay dead in an automobile. As she departed on exciting debate, speech, mock trial trips, as I scratched and rubbed her soft back at bedtime and told her bedtime stories like Adam and Aardvark ate apples and artichokes, as I sang her my lullaby, I love Elizabeth, oh yes I do. On the couch late at night during her first weeks of life, I loved holding my sweet daughter in my arms. Her smile stole my heart, her beautiful brown hair and brown eyes. Elizabeth Ann Brown, 1978 to 1996. On August 17, 1996, my 18-year-old daughter died in a car crash visiting friends in California just a few weeks before entering University of Chicago on a full 4-year academic scholarship. She was a beautiful, brilliant, talented verbal artist, performed in many school plays, winning speech and debate contests, as well as twice being on the New Mexico State champion high school debate team. And here's her photo. Of course, I was devastated, and I turned to poetry to express and help me process my grief. My old nemesis turned out to be my new source of solace. Visiting my family back in Midland to share with them about Elizabeth's death at a dinner party with siblings my father, aunts, uncles, cousins. I was astounded by the number of childhood deaths they mentioned. Their children, their siblings, many, there must have been at least 6 or 8 deaths mentioned by them at that dinner party, deaths of young children in the family. Driving out of town to return to Albuquerque, I stopped at my mother's grave, and the poem that I just read just came to me, which I wrote on a scrap of paper in the car. For nearly 5 years, I wrote poems of grief whenever I was confronted by the grief of my daughter's death. 3 months after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, I flew to New York City taking holiday greeting cards, which have been made by New Mexico school students, taking them to children of the 9/11 victims in a project called Comfort, Comfort and Joy. After delivering the cards to a YMCA center on Manhattan, I drove near to Ground Zero and took a cab there. From the sidewalk, I could see some of the steel girders, which had not yet been removed from the site. There was an open notebook there for visitors to write their thoughts, and I wrote this poem. Is there any difference? Crashing, smashing steel, music of violent collisions, spurting, flowing blood, majesty of hemorrhaging wounds, streaming, splashing tears, moisture of eternal grief. Is the tragedy of these thousands any different from her tragedy? Is the desperation of these parents any different from her father's desperation? Is their ton of blood any different from her gallon? Their blood and hers are as one. Their desperation and mine are as one. Their tragedy and Elizabeth's are as one. One difference may be I forgive and love Elizabeth's killer. She died in a car crash being driven by a great friend of hers in California that she'd met on the national high school debate circuit. And she had gone there to be with him and a few other of their debate friends before they all went off to college. It could happen at any time, of course, around her birthday and death anniversary, during special holidays, even watching TV, especially when a young woman accomplished something extraordinary, or during TV ads, which related a father and his daughter, like this one just last year, called She Made It. In a television advertisement during the Masters golf tournament, a young girl wearing a visor over her long dark hair addresses a long putt, carefully plots the path, takes a deep breath to relax her muscles, strokes the ball. It curves toward the hole where her father holds the pin, encourages the ball forward, saying, "Get legs." The ball seems to hesitate at the lip of the cup, then plunks into the hole, rattles at the bottom. The girl jumps with joy, scampers across the green into her father's arms, receives a big hug of congratulations. They hurry to their golf cart. She's giggling her satisfaction. I don't even register the sponsor of the advertisement. I thwart my tears, stifle my sobs. My daughter will never again giggle her satisfaction. I'll no longer hug her in congratulations. 25 years ago, when she was 18, Elizabeth died in a car crash. One important thing I noticed after writing poems such as these, I felt so much better. The pain of grief diminished substantially. I was able to feel joy once again. My key to a joyful life, or at least one key after a tragedy, is to express my feelings in a poem, sometimes share those feelings with others experiencing similar tragedies. After about 5 years of grief poetry, I was ready to move on to other poetry, poetry of joy, nature, beauty, love, happiness. For example, I was invited by my sister-in-law to write and read a poem for the wedding of their darling daughter, my niece, Lauren. who now, by the way, is a graduate of Harvard and of medical school and practices on Manhattan. That wedding took place in the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. At the time, I was often writing poems while listening to the beautiful chamber music at Albuquerque's Sunday Chatter. I was stimulated by Bach's Partita in D minor. So here's that wedding poem that I read in the National Cathedral. Alemanda. Love is an apricot pastry, orange, sticky, sweet, oddly tinged with tartness like two wild hearts. Corrente. Love is racing hand in hand across a mountain meadow until, exhausted, you stumble, laughing, falling in a tangled heap, wrapped in each other's arms. Sarabanda. Love is holding her face with gentle hands, gazing into her eyes, kissing tears of joy, drinking nectar of ecstasy. Giga. Love is dancing close enough to feel the other's breath, eyes glued to one another, seeing only the beloved, circling so closely, separation is inconceivable. Shakona. Love is two voices become one, two minds become one, two bodies become one, two souls become one, two prayers become one, two faiths become one, two lives become one life. By the way, she told me in a phone call recently that she'll be having her first child. This will be about six to 7 years after they were married. I think in August or September. This poem, with several others written while attending Sunday Chatter, as well as recipes for many of the pastries I've baked and donated monthly at the Sunday Chatter performances, appear in my little chapbook entitled Chatter Poems and Pastries. Now, 26 years after Elizabeth's death, I live a life of great joy with my mathematics and statistics teaching and tutoring, my singing, my baking and cooking, my family, my son Alex, his wife Lake, and their two daughters, Nevada and Dusty Rainbow, and my sweetheart Sandy and her son Aaron with his double lung transplant as a result of cystic fibrosis. Once again, after 20 years playing my favorite sport, golf, and of course with my poetry, hosting monthly fixed and free readings and publishing 4 fixed and free anthologies, plus the new Fixed and Free Quarterly. Here's a short, joyful story from my tutoring activities. Several years ago, I had a statistics student come to me for tutoring. She wanted to obtain a bachelor's degree in psychology, which requires passing a statistics course with at least a C, but she had scored a C and an F on her first 2 exams. She was desperate as she saw her dream of becoming a psychologist slowly disappearing. I began working with her, and I soon noticed that she actually enjoyed the material and had a significant talent for it. I remember one problem we read together, and she had the idea of how to solve it before I did. So I said to her, I believe you are capable of getting A's in this course, but something is holding you back. Think back. Do you remember something that happened to you perhaps many years ago that took away your confidence in mathematics? She immediately jumped back to her 5th grade class 10 years before, during which her teacher, obviously frustrated with her one day, said to her, "You just don't have the genes for doing well in mathematics." I almost burst into tears at hearing about such cruelty. But what was a 5th grade girl to do? Tell her teacher off? So she believed her teacher that she was not talented in math, and ever since, believing that teacher, she had always done poorly on math exams. I told her that happened a long time ago, and that teacher may no longer paralyze your ability in this statistics course. Stop believing her and start believing me that you can do A work in this class. Believe in yourself. All you have to do is to stop believing that teacher, work hard, and come to me with your questions and confusions, all of which she began to do. On the next exam, she scored the highest grade in her class, an A plus. On the final, she scored an A, and at that time, the instructor changed each student's lowest exam grade into their highest exam grade. And so she finished the course with exam grades of C, A plus, A plus, and she got an A in statistics. The last I heard, she went on to obtain her BA in psychology, and then in psychology graduate school, her minor subject was statistics. Talk about joy. I'm sure she felt enormous joy at her accomplishments, and I felt enormous joy at helping her see her way to that success. Almost every morning, I awaken early, eager to enjoy one of my favorite activities. And yes, I occasionally strike a vein of grief and shed a few tears for Elizabeth. And often I write another poem expressing those feelings, after which I feel so much better and can move back into my joyful life. Because poetry has been so important to me for a joyful life, I began fixed and free poetry to provide opportunities for others to express their deepest feelings in poetry, both at our readings and in our publications. There are very few experiences in my life that are more joyful than hearing a poet for the first time publicly read their poems at Fixed and Free or have their first published poem in one of our publications. Sometimes after a long, busy day, I'm exhausted and think, do I really want to attend a Fixed and Free poetry reading tonight? Sometimes I'm tempted to stay home and cancel the reading, but I've never done so because I know that the poets and poetry at Fixed and Free will raise my spirits and energize me again like few other activities. I plan to continue Fixed and Free poetry for as long as I'm able. And here's a few more poems to complete my presentation. Several of these were written in response to chamber music at Sunday Chatter. This one included Dies Irae by Kenji Bunch was the piece. Babbling springtime brook, fresh breeze rustling fragrant pines, fawn bedded secretly in warming sun, mama grazing nearby on fresh shoots of lush grasses, bloody fatal wolf attack, nature perfect as always. And this was written in response to Paul Hindemith's sonata for solo violin. Mary put some of the lines of this poem in her review. And by the way, I wrote this poem after I heard the announcer at Fixed and Free describe this story. And so this story is not my own invention, but just a poetic rendition of it. Anger with himself, anger that he's fallen prey to, anger that he missed his train, that he doesn't have a peaceful ride through beautiful countryside during which he can write the lyrical final movement with meandering river, horse-drawn plow, hundreds of birds taking their fill of worms, grubs, suddenly disclosed. Anger that he now must drive insanely over narrow roads, avoiding wagons, bicycles, livestock, arriving only moments before he goes on stage with his viola to play his unfinished sonata, missing the most important, the most lyrical, the most hauntingly yearning denouement, which he nevertheless recreates perfectly from memory, even more divinely than if he had caught his train and written it all down in precious peace. This poem was written in response to a suite for solo cello by Johann Sebastian Bach, and I call it Stream. A fresh stream tumbles toward the sea, singing all the notes available in its voice, rising to the highest, falling to the deepest pitches. Each twig, each stone, each boulder and spider's web, moistened by the stream, sings its own harmony to the stream's song, sometimes slowly, sometimes hurrying, to express its own passion, its own delight at being invited into the chorus. Dancing sometimes an allemande, sometimes a sarabande, caressing the soul of the lover so slowly, so gently, so intimately as to bring otherworldly pleasure, a most intense ecstasy. On its way to the sea, the stream vibrates each object, each soul it encounters, which in turn resonates in its own unique voice with this divine excitation. Eventually, in one universal harmony, activating every molecule, every atom, every soul in the universe, now living or departed or yet to exist, each soul to sing its part in a universal jig of joy. And this was written in response to a quartet for clarinet, horn, cello, and snare drum by, I don't know how to pronounce his first name, Bohuslav Martinu. And so there were several sections of this. To Allegro Moderato, I wrote, "Hay ride, all aboard. The wagon is piled with hay, crowded with young lovers. Two horses clip clop briskly down a dirt road. Riders settle in embracing against fall chill. A cellist, clarinetist entertain with folksy tunes. Poco andante. Romantic, sad melody from the cello, echoed by the clarinet, brings many lovers into long, tender cuddles, perhaps their last togetherness before he goes off to war or she embarks on a journey separating them for many weeks. Many tears salt conjoined lips, moisten caressed faces, lubricate intimate touching. Allegretto. Hayride ends at a jolly barn dance. Laughing couples joyfully swing each other to Eastern European folk tunes. All troubles, fears, sadnesses disappear in a flurry of joy. And I think that's it. So I'll stop sharing. And thank you for being with me.
Brilliant, Billy, brilliant.
Great. If everyone would unmute themselves so we can give a big applause for Billy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well,
Or as what's his name would say, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I'm going to stop recording now. I don't know. Here we go.